I never planned to reveal my success to my family. For years, I let them believe I was struggling with my tiny shop while quietly building one of the largest financial empires in New York. But my sister Sophia's constant mockery finally forced my hand that Christmas night. The evening started like any other family gathering at my parents' Upper East Side townhouse. Designer outfits, expensive wine, and the usual competition over who had achieved more this year. I deliberately wore a simple black dress from Target, playing my expected role as the family disappointment, Olivia Darling. My mother's voice carried that familiar note of carefully masked disappointment as I walked in. We were just discussing Sophia's latest promotion at Sterling & Pierce. She's now Senior Vice President of Operations. I smiled politely, remembering the confidential documents on my desk showing that Sterling & Pierce was actually one of my recent acquisitions, though that particular detail wasn't public yet. Congratulations, Sophia. That's wonderful. Sophia, impeccable in her Prada suit, barely glanced up from her phone. Thanks. How's that little vintage shop of yours doing? Still making ends meet. If she only knew that the little vintage shop was just a front, a small piece of real estate I kept as cover, while running Atlas Financial Group, a $50 billion investment firm that controlled nearly half of Wall Street's major players. But I just shrugged, maintaining my facade. We're doing fine. The tiny vintage clothing store in Brooklyn had started as a genuine business 10 years ago, right after I graduated from Harvard Business School. While my family pushed me to take a respectable position at a big firm like my sister, I had different plans. I used the store as my base, while quietly building Atlas Financial from the ground up. Just fine? My father raised an eyebrow, swirling his 20-year-old scotch. Sophia's division handled $3 billion in transactions last quarter alone. Maybe it's time you considered getting a real job, sweetheart. I'm sure Sophia could put in a good word for you at Sterling & Pierce. I'd get back a laugh, thinking about the meeting scheduled for tomorrow, where Sterling & Pierce's board would learn about their new ownership. Instead, I said, "Thanks, Dad, but I'm happy where I am." Sophia snorted delicately. "Of course you are. Some people just lack ambition. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real business." The irony was almost too much. Just that morning, I had closed a deal worth more than Sterling & Pierce's entire market cap. But here I sat, letting my sister lecture me about real business. "Remember when Olivia actually went to Harvard Business School?" my mother added, shaking her head. "All that potential wasted on a little shop. At least Sophia made something of herself." The doorbell rang, interrupting what was sure to be another recap of my supposed failures. My mother brightened immediately. "Oh, that must be Marcus. Sophia, your boss said he might stop by, didn't he?" Marcus Evans, CEO of Sterling & Pierce, was indeed supposed to make an appearance. What my family didn't know was that he was here at my request, not Sophia's. After years of hiding my success, I had finally decided it was time for a change. The mounting takeover of Sterling & Pierce had provided the perfect opportunity. Sophia straightened her designer dress, clearly eager to impress her CEO. "Yes, Marcus mentioned he tried to drop in. He's been such a wonderful mentor to me." The household staff ushered Marcus into the dining room. He was exactly as I remembered from our board meetings. Tall, distinguished, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. But while my family saw Sterling & Pierce's powerful CEO, I saw a man who now answered to me. Sophia jumped up immediately. "Marcus, I'm so glad you could make it. Let me introduce you to my family." But Marcus's eyes had already found me, and the look of recognition was immediate. He stepped forward, hand extended, completely ignoring Sophia's attempt at introductions. "Ms. Reynolds," he said formally, using my professional name. "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." The room fell silent. Sophia's smile froze on her face. "Hello, Marcus," I replied calmly. "Merry Christmas." "Wait," Sophia interrupted, confusion evident in her voice. "How do you know my sister?" Marcus looked genuinely puzzled. "Your sister?" He glanced between us. "I apologize. I had no idea Miss Reynolds was your sister. She's the CEO of Atlas Financial Group, our new owner." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers, crashing to the floor. Sophia's face had gone completely white, and my father, he just stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "Owner?" Sophia whispered. "That's impossible. Olivia runs a vintage clothing store. I smiled, finally letting my carefully maintained facade drop. Actually, Sophia, I own quite a bit more than that, including, as of tomorrow morning, Sterling and Pierce. The vintage store had been my cover for years, allowing me to build my empire away from my family's judgmental eyes. While they mocked my little shop, I was quietly becoming one of the most powerful figures in finance. Atlas Financial Group, named after my childhood fascination with Greek mythology, now controlled over $50 billion in assets. Sophia sank back into her chair, her perfectly maintained composure crumbling. But you run a shop in Brooklyn. The shop was a front, I explained, feeling a weight lift as I finally spoke the truth. I needed somewhere quiet to work while building Atlas, somewhere no one would look too closely at what I was really doing. My father found his voice first. Atlas Financial Group. My God. They're behind half the major acquisitions on Wall Street. They just bought out Richardson Brothers last month for $12 billion. $13 billion, I corrected gently. And yes, that was us. My mother's hand flew to her throat, fingering her pearls nervously. But all these years, why didn't you tell us? I looked around the table at their shocked faces, remembering every dismissive comment, every mockery of my little shop, every comparison to Sophia's corporate success. Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. You were so convinced I was wasting my potential, so sure I was a failure. It was easier to let you think what you wanted while I built something on my own terms. Marcus cleared his throat awkwardly. I should mention that the official announcement about Sterling and Pierce goes out tomorrow morning. The board approved the acquisition an hour ago. Sophia made a small choking sound. You? You bought my company? Actually, I corrected her. I bought your company 3 months ago through a series of shell corporations. Tomorrow it just becomes public knowledge. I turned to Marcus. I trust everything is prepared for the transition. He nodded quickly. Yes, Miss Reynolds. All the paperwork is ready for your signature first thing tomorrow. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of shocked silence and awkward attempts at conversation. My family struggled to reconcile their image of me, the disappointing daughter with a little vintage shop, with the reality of who I had become. My sister barely spoke another word, her earlier confidence shattered by the revelation that her unsuccessful sister now owned her company. As I prepared to leave, my father finally approached me, his expression a mix of confusion and dawning respect. Olivia, I don't understand. Why maintain the pretense all these years? Why last think you were struggling? I paused at the door, thinking carefully about my answer. Because Dad, success isn't about impressing others or living up to their expectations. It's about building something meaningful on your own terms. And sometimes the best way to do that is to let people underestimate you. I stepped out into the cold December night, leaving my stunned family behind. Tomorrow the world would learn that Atlas Financial Group had acquired Sterling and Pierce. Tomorrow my sister would discover what it meant to actually work for me. But tonight I had finally shed the weight of my family's disapproval, and it felt better than any business deal I'd ever closed. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of the changes I had planned. The vintage shop might have been my cover story, but it had taught me something valuable. Appearances can be deceiving, and the quiet ones often hold the most power. As I drove home to my penthouse apartment, another secret my family knew nothing about, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about revealing your true worth to those who never believed in you in the first place. The morning after Christmas, I sat in my real office, the entire top floor of a gleaming skyscraper overlooking Manhattan. The wall-to-wall windows offered a spectacular view of the city I now partially owned, a far cry from the tiny vintage shop in Brooklyn where my family thought I spent my days. My assistant Emma walked in, tablet in hand. The Sterling and Pierce announcement goes live in 10 minutes. Also, your sister has tried to call 17 times since 6 a.m. I smiled, remembering Sophia's face when she learned the truth last night. Any messages? Mostly variations of "we need to talk and you can't do this to me." Emma paused. Your parents have called too. Your mother left a message saying she's planning a family dinner to discuss the situation properly. Of course she was. In my mother's world, every crisis could be solved over an elaborate dinner party. But this wasn't something that could be smoothed over with fine wine and forced smiles. Ms. Reynolds, Emma interrupted my thoughts. The Sterling and Pierce board is waiting in the main conference room, and your sister is in the lobby. I straightened my Armani suit. No more Target dresses now that my cover was blown. Send the board up. Let Sophia wait. The next hour was spent finalizing the Sterling and Pierce acquisition. The board members who had only known me as the mysterious CEO of Atlas Financial now treated me with a mixture of respect and fear. They had no choice. Atlas Financial now owns 67% of their company. Finally, I nodded to Emma. Send Sophia up. My sister burst into my office like a hurricane in designer clothes. She stopped short at the sight of my expansive office, her eyes widening as she took in the elegant furniture, the priceless art, and the commanding view of Manhattan. This is impossible, she whispered. Clearly not, I replied calmly, not bothering to stand. Did you need something, Sophia? She whirled to face me, her composure cracking. Need something? You bought my company. You've been lying to us for years, playing poor little Olivia with her pathetic little shop while secretly building an empire? I supplied. Yes, I did. And I didn't lie. I just let you believe what you wanted to believe. But why? She demanded. Why hide it? Why let us think you were a failure? I leaned back in my chair, studying my sister carefully because you needed to. You, Mom, Dad, you all needed to believe I was less successful than you. It made you feel better about yourselves. That's not true. I pulled up some files on my computer. Let's see. In the past 5 years, you've mentioned my little shop exactly 147 times in family gatherings. Mom has suggested I get a real job 89 times. And you've used the words wasted potential in reference to me at least 50 times. Sophia's face flushed. You've been keeping count? I keep track of everything, Sophia. It's how I built this company. It's how I knew Sterling and Pierce would be the perfect acquisition, and it's how I knew exactly when to reveal the truth. She sank into one of my visitor chairs, her designer dress crumpling. So what happens now? Are you going to fire me? I smiled. Fire you? No, Sophia, I'm promoting you. Her head snapped up. What? You're good at your job, I acknowledged. Your division has shown consistent growth. I'm making you Executive Vice President of Global Operations. Hope flickered across her face. Really? With one condition. I leaned forward. You report directly to me. Every decision, every major move, it goes through me first. Think you can handle having your little sister as your boss? The hope in her eyes dimmed slightly. For the first time in our lives, the power dynamic had shifted completely. No more mockery, no more condescension. Now she had to answer to the sister she'd spent years looking down on. I'll need to think about it, she managed. Take all the time you need, I replied smoothly. The position is open until tomorrow morning. After that, I'll find someone else. She stood up shakily, smoothing her dress with trembling hands. As she reached the door, she paused. Olivia, that vintage shop, why keep it? Now that everyone knows the truth, because I like it, I said simply. It reminds me of where I started, and it keeps me grounded. Success isn't just about corner offices and billion-dollar deals, Sophia. Sometimes it's about staying true to yourself, even when everyone else thinks you're wrong. After she left, Emma brought in my afternoon schedule. Your parents' dinner invitation, should I decline? I thought about it for a moment. The old Olivia would have made an excuse, avoided the confrontation, but I wasn't hiding anymore. Accept it, I decided, but make sure they know I'll be coming directly from the office. Let's see how they handle having the real me at their dinner table. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and calls. News of the Sterling and Pierce acquisition had hit the financial world like a bomb. Atlas Financial Group was now officially one of the most powerful firms on Wall Street, and I was no longer the shadowy figure behind it. As I prepared to leave from my parents' dinner, I received one final message from Sophia. I accept the position, but this isn't over. I smiled, slipping my phone into my designer bag. Of course it wasn't over. This was just the beginning. My family had spent years underestimating me, dismissing my choices, mocking my supposed failure. Now they would learn exactly what I was capable of. The vintage shop in Brooklyn might have been my cover story, but Atlas Financial was my true legacy. And now that my family knew the truth, it was time to show them just how far their disappointing daughter had really come. I stepped into my private elevator, heading down to where my driver waited. Tonight's dinner would be interesting. No more hiding. No more pretending to be less than I was. It was time for my family to meet the real Olivia Reynolds, CEO of Atlas Financial Group and owner of half of Wall Street. And something told me they weren't ready for what that really meant. My driver pulled up to my parents' townhouse precisely at 10. This time I didn't try to blend in. My Channel suit and Louboutin heels announced exactly who I was. Not the daughter they'd dismissed for years, but the powerful CEO I'd become. The family butler, who now knew I could buy and sell this house 100 times over, opened the door with a deep bow. "Miss Reynolds, your family's waiting in the dining room." I could hear heated whispers as I approached. They fell silent when I entered. My mother, father, and Sophia sat around the massive dining table, looking like they'd been caught plotting something, which, knowing them, they probably had. "Olivia," my mother managed, her voice strained, "you look different." "Amazing what wearing your real clothes can do," I replied, taking my seat. "No more Target dresses needed." My father cleared his throat. "We've been discussing the situation, and we think—" "The situation?" I interrupted, raising an eyebrow. "You mean my success? My company? The fact that I'm now Sophia's boss?" "About that," Sophia cut in, "I've been thinking about the position you offered." "The position isn't negotiable," I said firmly. "You either accept it on my terms, or you find somewhere else to work. Though good luck explaining to other firms why you left a promotion at Atlas Financial." My mother's hands fluttered nervously with her napkin. "Darling, there's no need to be so aggressive. We're family." "Family?" I laughed softly. "Was it family when you mocked my little shop for years? When you compared me to Sophia at every opportunity? When you told everyone who would listen that I'd wasted my Harvard degree? We were trying to motivate you," my father argued, "to push you to achieve more." "No," I corrected him. "You were trying to force me into your version of success. But here's what you never understood. I had my own plan. While you were focused on titles and appearances, I was building something real. The first course arrived, expensive wine, perfect salmon, all designed to smooth over family tensions. But I wasn't interested in pretending anymore." "Do you know why I kept the vintage shop?" I asked, watching them pick at their food. "It wasn't just a cover. It was a reminder of what really matters. While you were all chasing status and recognition, I was learning about real value, about seeing worth in things others overlooked." "But why hide it?" my mother pressed. "Why let us believe you were struggling?" "Because you needed to," I said simply. "Your whole worldview depended on having someone to look down on. The successful parents, the perfect daughter Sophia, and poor struggling Olivia. It made you feel better about yourselves." Sophia flinched. "That's not fair, isn't it?" I pulled out my phone, opened my notes. "Would you like me to read some of your comments from the past few years? The ones about my waste of potential, or maybe the time you told your friends I was still finding myself while you were building a real career?" "Enough," my father interrupted. "What do you want, Olivia? Money? Power? You clearly have both now." I sat down my fork, looked each of them in the eye. "What I want is acknowledgement, not of my success. I don't need your validation for that. I want you to acknowledge how you treated me, how you belittled my choices, dismissed my path, and made me feel less than because I didn't follow your script." Silence fell over the table. My mother's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide her discomfort. My father's usual authority seemed to have deserted him. And Sophia, she looked lost. Her world turned upside down. Finally, my father spoke. We were wrong." "Yes," I agreed. "You were. But you have to understand." My mother jumped in. "We only wanted what was best for you." "Number," I corrected her gently. "You wanted what looked best to others. There's a difference." I stood up, smoothing my designer suit. "I have an early meeting tomorrow. Atlas Financial is acquiring another firm, one that makes Sterling and Pierce look small in comparison. Sophia, I expect you in my office at 8 sharp. We have a lot of work to do." "Olivia, please," my mother called as I turned to leave. "Can't we just go back to the way things were?" I paused at the door. "Number, we can't. But we can move forward if you're willing to accept me as I am, not as you wish I was." "And if we can't?" my father asked quietly. "Then you'll miss out on knowing who I really am," I replied. "Your choice." I left them sitting there, surrounded by their expensive dinner and shattered assumptions. My driver was waiting outside, ready to take me back to my penthouse apartment. "Rough night?" he asked, seeing my expression. Actually, I smiled. It was perfect. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find Sophia already waiting. She looked different, humbler somehow, without her usual armor of superiority. "I've been thinking," she said before I could speak, "about everything you said last night." "You were right." I gestured for her to continue. I was jealous," she admitted, "not of your success. I didn't know about that, but of your confidence, your ability to follow your own path without caring what anyone thought. I always needed their approval, and now I'd like to learn from you. Really learn, not just accept the promotion. If you're willing to teach me," I studied my sister, seeing for the first time, not my lifelong rival, but someone who might actually be ready to grow. "First lesson," I said, sitting down at my desk. "Success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right." Over the next few months, things changed. Not dramatically. Years of family dynamics don't disappear overnight. But slowly, steadily, the relationships shifted. My parents stopped trying to micromanage my life and actually started listening when I spoke. My mother replaced her subtle digs with genuine questions about my business. My father began asking for my advice on investments. Sophia worked harder than I'd ever seen her, learning the real meaning of success. She still struggled sometimes with reporting to her younger sister, but she was trying. That counted for something. The vintage shop in Brooklyn? I kept it, spending Saturday afternoons there when I needed a break from being CEO. It remained my sanctuary, a reminder of where I came from and what I built. 1 year after that fateful Christmas dinner, I hosted the family holiday party in my penthouse apartment. No more pretense, no more hiding, no more uncomfortable digs about my career choices. As I watched my family mingle with New York's financial elite, I caught Sophia speaking to a junior analyst. "My sister," she was saying, "taught me that real success isn't about titles or appearances. It's about building something meaningful, something true to who you are." I smiled, sipping my champagne. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even or proving people wrong. Sometimes it's about showing them a better way to be right. The vintage shop's bell still rings every day, its small space filled with carefully curated pieces and stories waiting to be discovered. And 50 floors above it, in a gleaming office tower, sits the empire that proves success comes in many forms. You just have to be brave enough to follow your own path, even when everyone else thinks you're lost. As I looked out over the city lights that night, I realized something important. My family had spent years trying to fix what they saw as my failures, never realizing that their definition of success was what needed fixing all along. Now they knew the truth, not just about my business empire, but about the strength it takes to stay true to yourself in a world that constantly tries to make you someone else. And that, more than any amount of money or power, was the real measure of my success.